I'm Dan Green. Welcome back to the Greening Out podcast. Episode 5 this is. We're back on the couch with Barney, and the subject we're talking about is voting.
Yeah.
Is voting something? We've got the European elections coming up on the 22nd of May, and obviously, see my blog for my views on the EU, but we're not going to get into that. But I've been going back and forth in my mind about this question as sort of anarchists. Do we vote? Do we not vote?
If I could just jump in, something that made a lot of sense to me and made me start to think and research this a bit more is something that George Carlin said. So what I'd like to do is just quickly read that to put it into context. Okay? So this is a quote from George Carlin. "I have solved this political dilemma in a very direct way. I don't vote. On election day, I stay home. I firmly believe that if you vote, you have no right to complain." Now, some people like to twist that around and they say if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. But where's the logic in that? If you vote and you elect dishonest, incompetent politicians and they get into office and screw everything up, you are responsible for what they have done. You voted them in, you caused the problem, you have no right to complain. I, on the other hand, who did not vote, who did not even leave the house on election day, am in no way responsible for that these politicians have done and have every right to complain about the mess that you created. That is a quote from George Carlin that we'll put in the show notes.
Yeah, I think he pretty much nailed it there though, didn't he?
Yeah, that starts to make me think, because I used to be of the opinion if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. Because I used to, people often say to me, people died for your right to vote. People
they
sacrificed.
point to the suffragettes and things like that as well.
People died as a woman.
Yeah.
People did sacrifice their lives to give me the vote. But in saying that, I don't think that these people could have envisaged the world that we live in today. And that's why I think a lot of people like to throw that one out. People died for your right to vote and things like that.
Well, that's the thing, because
you have to put it in today's context.
Yeah, well, obviously, the EU Parliament is a joke, and then the British parliamentary elections. I mean, it's just you're voting for I think it was who was it? It was George Galloway actually who said they're just all, if a buttock could have three cheeks, Labour, the Tories and the Lib Dems would be, three cheeks of the same arse, basically.
Yeah.
And he's right, because there's not really that much difference between them at all. I mean, they're all signed up to the same things when it matters, like our EU membership and, feeding the war machine.
Who was it said that great quote that I really like?
Emma Goldman.
Emma Goldman. If voting changed anything, they'd make it illegal.
Absolutely.
And I do believe that. I don't believe that with today's system, we're going to be able to elect anybody.
I mean, it's just basically it's like which slave master do you vote for? It's like this guy might rule me a bit, and they'll bribe you on their campaign. And they'll say, "Oh well, we'll do this for you.
We'll do this, we'll do that."
Yeah,
but once they're in power,
they don't care about you. I mean, they don't care about you to begin with, and that's all it is. And then if you vote and I don't, then you're just voting for the guy that's going to be my slave master, basically.
Yeah.
The guy that's going to rule me through violence and coercion.
It's a mental system. It really is.
What I found was interesting as well, actually, was I was looking at UK political info.
Yeah,
And I'll include this in the show notes as well, and they have a graph. It's the general election turnout from 1945 to 2010. And what was surprising is it starts kind of high in 1945.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it jumps. Well, it starts off at 72.8% in 1945, right? And then it jumps to the highest it was in 1950 is 83.9%. Then it kind of goes up and down a little bit to reach an all-time low at 2001, 59.4%.
Yeah.
But then the last two elections, 2005 went up to 61.4%, and then 2010 it went up to 65.1%. Now, not a big jump, but it is going up from an all-time low.
It would be interesting to look at what was happening around those times.
Yeah, each time.
Who was running, what was the current economic kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be a whole, that'd be a series on its own probably if we went right in. Absolutely, it would definitely. The thing I'm thinking about this is, if the biggest message we can send is just simply not to vote. Really, that's the conclusion I've come to. And this is because when you think about it, people talk about things like how do you change things? Do you vote in a new government? Say you vote in, say some magical libertarian party just appears in front of us.
Yeah.
And they say we want a really small minarchist state, and we all vote for it. Governments always grow. I mean, it didn't take long. That's how America was founded.
That's the nature of government.
And now look at the American government. It's a massive imperial power. They still have a permanent base in Japan.
Yeah.
Like, they've got bases in every continent. They're a huge imperial power. And this is the thing. So if you vote for a libertarian minarchist party, you know what's going to happen. They're going to find excuses and they're going to grow. So that doesn't work. No. Does a violent armed struggle work? If you can raise an army to fight Britain, and they'll probably America and everybody else, the EU will jump in to defend them, it's not going to happen. No. And you can't solve it with violence. The only way that we could really get rid of the state would be through huge mass non-compliance. Yeah. I've said it before and I'll say it again, huge mass non-compliance. Can you imagine if the voter turnout was 3% or something? And what would they do? They have no legitimacy to rule anymore.
I know.
Do they revert back to a monarchy then? Is that what happens? I wonder what would happen. Because then
it's interesting to wonder. I know.
Because then we would have spoken, and we would have spoken much more definitively than if we'd all put a wee X on a bit of paper.
I know.
We'd have spoken much more.
I mean, obviously, it's your right to spoil a ballot paper. It's your right to write whatever you want in there. Yeah. But I think by not turning up, by not complying, like
just
you're saying,
completely disengage.
I think that's the strongest message you can send. You can say, I don't believe in government, therefore I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you my time. My time is valuable. It's all I have to sell.
We'll get there, but just before we get to that, I'd just like to just read a little quote for what Murray Rothbard said about voting. Because he actually, Murray Rothbard, for anyone that doesn't know, was the economist of the Austrian school, who basically coined the phrase anarcho-capitalism, which is what we talk about a lot. That's what he said about voting. He said, let's put it this way. Suppose we were slaves in the Old South, and that for some reason each plantation had a system where the slaves were allowed to choose every 4 years between two alternative masters. Would it be evil and sanctioning slavery to participate in such a choice? Suppose one master was a monster who systematically tortured all the slaves, while the other one was kindly enforced almost no work rules, freed one slave a year or whatever. It would seem to me not aggression to vote for the kinder master, but idiotic if we failed to do so. Of course, there might well be circumstances, say when both masters are similar, where the slaves would be better off not voting in order to make a visible protest. But this is a tactical, not a moral consideration. Voting would not be evil, but in such a case be less effective than the protest. But if it is morally licit and non-aggressive for slaves to vote for a choice of masters, in the same way it's licit for us to vote for what we believe the lesser of two or more evils, and still more beneficial to vote for avowedly libertarian candidates.
It's interesting because I do hear the argument a lot. People say, oh well, I might as well vote.
He's just a little better, sort of better the devil sort of thing.
He's, the lesser of two evils, let's just do it this way.
Yeah.
To me, that's pandering to the system. It's not taking a stand for anything.
But then, say there was a truly libertarian party and we knew they weren't going to get in.
Yeah.
But loads of people just voted for them. Do you think that would make...
I mean, I think we all, Dan and I agree something has to change. Something's got to give. Something, the way things are going are not working.
But what do you think about that question? As like a protest?
Voting for the Libertarian Party as opposed to not voting? Yeah,
like as a protest. But
it's an interesting topic. Obviously, you can be a libertarian, a fan of minarchism, which is what I'm assuming we're talking about here.
I'm just thinking, like as a protest vote. I mean, I'm still not going to vote. But
as we said earlier, though, minarchism doesn't work. It's not the nature of government.
It's going
so
to swell. But
that
like,
question to me is...
I'm not saying like if they get in. I'm not saying we're not presupposing
they
they're going
run.
to get in. Just as like a protest. But I suppose all that is that just an empty protest? It's not really making any difference. Is anyone really going to listen?
Yeah,
I think it's probably a bigger protest to not show up.
I think it would be a much larger protest on a much larger scale.
Just to not show up.
To not show up.
Just to disengage completely.
I mean, obviously, from the statistics that you gave us, Dan, people, a lot of people don't show up. Not everybody does show up. I, for one, would love to see the day when nobody showed up, because people in government, the parties in the UK alone, if we're talking about just UK elections,
they would get confirmation of what they've always suspected, is that people know that it's bullshit.
Yeah.
And that would be the confirmation.
What I'd like to do, can we talk a bit about...
Oh, I just want to, just before we go on a bit, like, I just want to, because we're going to talk about solutions then. So I'd just like to give you a short quote of what Samuel Edward Konkin III said to that Murray Rothbard quote, because Samuel Konkin was the person who coined the term agorism, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I'll give you the quote that was his response to Murray Rothbard's quote. He said, "Can you imagine slaves on a plantation sitting around voting for masters and spending their energy on campaigning and candidates when they could be heading for the Underground Railway? Surely they would choose the counter-economic alternative. Surely Dr. Rothbard would urge them to do so and not be seduced into remaining on the plantation until the abolitionist slave masters party is elected." So that was his response. But that's the problem. But there's one more aspect to the problem I'd like to talk about before we move to the solution, and that is referendums. Because we've established that we think voting for the party system doesn't work.
Yes.
But there's the Scottish independence referendum.
We have one coming up September, honestly.
See, I would vote in that. I would.
Yeah.
You know, referendums are a sort of different thing. It depends what the referendum is. But I know we're still going to have a state, and we'll still be under the EU. But then that's a different question than just general election voting.
It is a different question, and it's one that right now it's not that I'm not prepared to answer. I don't know how to answer right now.
Is that something you're still tossing about?
I'm still tossing it over in my head.
Whether it's even worth it.
Yeah.
Because,
I don't have much faith in government. If somebody could come along and really give me some good evidence to support.
But it's just such a toxic system. It's based on back scratching and lobbying and bribery, and only people that get far enough in politics, they've got, I think a great representation of it is the Netflix series that's just the second series has come out, House of Cards, with Kevin Spacey. Because when you watch that programme, you realise that he gets things done because his enforcer's got something on everybody.
Yeah.
And he just goes through blackmailing everybody to doing things for him. And
was the British House of Cards the original one?
That was very similar. That was much older. Yeah, that was in the 90s, which is also available on Netflix. I recommend both.
I enjoy it. I do. For those of you that don't know, me and Dan don't have programme television. We run on Netflix and internet. So
that's actually an example that takes us very nicely into the solutions. Because the solution surely is then to vote with your money. And that's what we have done, because we got rid of Sky. We stopped paying for it. We got rid of it. And now instead we give that money we donate and subscribe to independent podcasts.
A lot of things that are, some have advertisements, some don't. A lot of podcasts
that are independently run. So we're going away from this propagandist media rubbish.
We are starting to vote with your money. To me, anyway, means to support businesses that you think are good. So I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, that Sky TV bill, it's a lot of money."
For all those channels, those hundreds of channels that you watch.
I know, you don't watch, I know. I often feel like saying to people, take some responsibility for yourself. Stop buying into that system.
But it comes in, you're right, and it comes in everywhere, like with food and things, you don't want GMO food.
Yeah.
Then don't buy GMO food, buy organic.
Aye.
You know, it's
some people
it's a
would
small
argue,
step, but that's how it works.
Some people would argue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that
Mm-hmm.
argument.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people would say, "Well, I can't afford to." If you really look at it, I mean,
it's not that much more expensive.
It's not that much more expensive, and if you cut out other things, it is possible to do. And I'm not saying you should do it with everything in your life, but the things that you have power to change them.
And there's another aspect in our own lives, because I'm vegetarian and you're pescatarian, and
fish.
we're very against animal cruelty. So we stopped buying products that were tested on animals, and we moved to buying products that were, you know, that haven't been tested on animals, that are friendly.
Made, and
so that's another example. Made. You know, you want to fight animal testing, support the people who are producing products that aren't tested on animals. Again, GMO food, you don't want it. Support organic farmers.
So the thing is, as well, I'd like to say, I just want to make it so clear, my stance on this is, if you can change it, do change it. If it's out with your control, okay.
Yeah, but the little bits you can do. Yeah. Even if you just do a little bit.
Every little bit helps, I think.
Even if it's not much, because I mean, we can't afford to completely overhaul everything.
No.
And buy everything the way we like to.
No, that's not something that we can do.
But the things we can change, we do. No. And see if enough people do that. You know, en masse.
Absolutely.
Then that will make a massive difference. And it's just these little things.
And that to me is voting with your money.
Absolutely.
You're voting for the kind of world you want through the things that you buy. And that's what that means to me, and I wanted to get that out. And
this also ties into agorism.
Uh-huh.
So we mentioned Samuel Konkin.
Yep.
And I'll just read just a wee quick bit of the Mises wiki, the Mises.org wiki page, just so people have got a grounding of what I mean by that.
That would work.
Now, agorism is the practice of counter-economics and the ideas associated with that practice. Agorist ideas insert that libertarian philosophy occurs in practice in the real world as counter-economics. It was first proposed by libertarian philosopher Samuel Edward Konkin in 1975. Although very similar to anarcho-capitalism, agorism is explicitly opposed to political elections and parliamentary strategies. Some agorists oppose intellectual property, some allow for certain forms of intellectual property. Many anarcho-capitalists and voluntarists are practicing agorists. There is no definitive policy statement from any authoritative leader of agorism, because agorism is decentralised and it's non-hierarchical by definition. Agorism, which is based on the principle of counter-economics, promotes withdrawing from the state and using counter-economic activities to minimise what a person contributes to the state in the form of taxes, licence fees, and so forth. And just an interesting note on the term agorism, it was coined by Konkin. It comes from classical Greek, and what it means is an open place for assembly and market. Like a free market.
A free market.
So that's really what we're talking about, you know, because that's what, like, what you're saying, counter-economics, you know, have your own small economic, you know, trade with local people.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's not getting too much off topic, but we've been talking a lot about even Bitcoin and Litecoin and things like that.
A lot of cryptocurrencies, digital currencies that are coming up in the world a lot. I don't want to go too much into that because I'd like to do a separate show on that.
Oh, absolutely. But just the point is, again, if you're using that kind of currency and more people are accepting it, then that's voting with your money again, and then it's taking you away from the currencies by the big central that are issued by the big central banks.
Yeah.
You know, the fractional reserve banking, it takes you out of that, you know, and they're running scared from it.
Oh, they're absolutely freaking out. I think we should put a link to some Bitcoin information.
We will,
I say Bitcoin, it's not just Bitcoin, there's tons now. Litecoin, Dogecoin, Blackcoin, there's so many now. So but that we will talk about that in depth.
But that's another interesting angle to this. And I don't think a lot of people think this way. You know, they don't realise that it can be a real act of attacking the state.
Yeah. Just
by voting with your money instead of, you know,
protesting. I don't feel does a lot. I know it's good
a lot of protests, you're just going to the people that caused the problem and asking them to solve the problem that they caused.
It's appealing to the wrong authority.
Yeah,
you're appealing to any authority really.
If you're appealing to the government to change something, then you know
they made the mess. Why do you think they have any interest in cleaning it up?
Was it not Einstein who said you can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it?
I don't know. I need to look it up.
I believe it was Einstein.
Was it?
Yeah. But, you know, and that's the thing, I don't think a lot of people are thinking this way.
Well, I think that's the problem, that some people might be aware of what's going on, but they might think, I can't change it, so why should I bother? And Dan, you know me, that used to be my stance.
Oh yeah,
a while ago was, I can't do anything, why bother? But Gandhi said, be the change you want to see, and that is something that speaks to me, makes sense to me.
Well, you know that classic phrase, if you think you're too small to affect something, you haven't spent a night alone in a cave with a mosquito.
Who said that?
It came up in the thick of it. He claimed it was an African proverb, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But it came up in the last series of The Thick of It, but it makes a point.
The Thick of It's another great example of
how politics actually works.
great British politics. Don't know how much truth is in it, but it's funny to watch anyway.
I would guess more than you know.
But anyway, so we're talking about, obviously, voting with your money. We talked about Agorism, and
because I think that's the only way, because if everyone was to, for example, really get behind ethical products and cryptocurrencies and things like that, then that will do much more than putting a wee cross on a bit of paper can ever possibly do. And like we said, that's the problem, and all you're doing is you're just perpetuating their system. Every time you vote, you're legitimising their system.
You're saying what they're doing is okay.
Because if we say, how have you got power to rule us? And, and they say, well, all these people voted for me.
We were voted in.
But if they can't say that,
I know.
Then
what argument do they have?
They've got no leg to stand on, And that's it. I think that's really the solution. Really the solution is to vote with your money. So, I think we've really gotten a hold of that one there.
Yeah, I feel quite good about that. I stand by what I've said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're going to probably look into more ways in which we can do that.
I'm always looking for more ways. Always looking for more ways
we can just gradually. It's about gradual withdrawal. I mean,
you don't wake up one day and go, I'm not doing this anymore.
Well, you might feel like that, but you can't do it. You can't do it. I feel like that all the time. But
Dan and I, we both work full time, and we are busy people, and we can't just obviously withdraw so much from the state, but every little bit at a time.
I think if you just start slowly, the little things.
Yeah.
If everyone does the little things, like if everyone supported organic farmers, if everyone just bought, like, I don't know, just some of their veg organic each week, that helps, and just don't buy things that have got like GMO in them and things.
I'm personally, things like farmers markets, I'm going to start looking into local market stalls.
Homegrown things.
A lot more homegrown, just to support more local businesses, because they are doing a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel that that's important. And some people might say it's a selfish thing. It does make me feel good. It makes me feel better about myself.
Do you know what that is as well? See, by just doing that, it's a very small act of revolution in itself, because you're not legitimising their system anymore.
Exactly.
And I think that's the point. So, I think we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah, I feel really good about that.
I think we've gotten to the point of that. As always, the website's greetingoutpodcast.co.uk.
We're on Twitter now.
We are on Twitter.
At greeting_out.
Absolutely. Also, so check out on the website, check out the blog. My blog as well is on there.
Yep.
Our Twitter feeds are on the website too. We also have a second-hand bookshop. We
have a second-hand bookshop. That's how we fund the podcast
and support the show that way. You can also donate on the website
if you want. Yes.
We also have a Facebook page as well.
Yeah. So it's just starting up.
So you can, and there's a link to that on our website too. So you can feel free to like that. So I think we'll wrap up for this time.
Thank you so much. Like I always say it. If you want to get in touch, even if it's to say fuck you, I don't agree with you, do it, because we do want to connect with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you to everybody who's supported the Twitter page thus far. That's really, really great. So thank you and good night.
Yes.